times you can get caught in the trauma loop and you're just in an echo chamber of everything is trauma, everything is a victim, everything is every action, everything I say and do. And we just get caught in this loop in our head, when in reality, you really have to get back to play. You have to get back to nature. You have to get back to dancing and moving your body. And that's part of the journey. It's just to close the trauma circle. For me, this is like a program I've developed over 15 years. But like there's a lot of healing with your parents, your relationship with your parents, relationship with your younger self, relationship with your younger siblings or people you knew when you were a kid. And then for me personally, this is like my own, but to close the circle of healing every kind of component is to like be childlike again. Like we're really trying to get back to this, like children are our greatest teachers, and they're not judgmental. They're in the moment. They're in the present. They're playing, they're loving, they're emotional, which is great. Being emotional is amazing. We're emotional beings first and foremost. And so, it's a couple different components to it.
Welcome my guest, BC Serna. He's an accomplished community architect with a passion for creating positive change in the world. For over 15 years, he has traveled extensively to more than 80 countries, working with a wide range of movements, nonprofit organizations, and companies to help raise awareness and support for various causes. From assisting Syrian refugees to taking inner-city Denver high schoolers around the world, BC's work has been focused on mainly a difference wherever he goes. Currently, BC leads Pursuing Purpose, an organization that helps individuals overcome childhood traumas, heal emotional wounds, and build conscious communities through live events and retreats. Through his work, he has created and cultivated a wealth of resources and networks that he shares with others to help them achieve their goals. With over 1,000 individuals mentored and a strong online presence of over 100K members, BC's commitment to creating a better world is evident in everything he does. In addition to Pursuing Purpose, BC has founded and led other impactful projects, including the Traveling Good and the National Leadership Academy. His vast experience in community building, content creation, and mentorship has made him a respectful leader in his field. BC is deeply committed to helping individuals find their purpose, overcome obstacles, and create meaningful change in their lives and in the world. All right, welcome to another episode on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I have the honor of bringing BC Serna onto the show, and I just want to acknowledge you right now because the more I've learned about you and just your journey and all the vast experiences you've had in your life and really your mentorship that has impacted thousands of lives, it is so inspiring. And as I was talking before I pressed record, when I heard your story that you mentored high schooling kids in Young Life, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when I went to Young Life and it was a life-changing experience. And we'll go into that, but I just want to welcome you to the show and just acknowledge, like, thank you for all you've done. I mean, you're changing lives.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's
been a journey. Honored to be here. Thank you so much. Obviously the title of your podcast is incredible, Passion, Love, Pursuit. Like, it's perfect. And so, honored to be here and thankful and so excited to connect.
Yeah. And exactly when I found out what you do and what you really serve in is helping people pursue their purpose, passion, and really what ignites their soul on fire and reconnect to their authentic self. I'm like, we got the same mission. And your podcast is called Pursuing Purpose. Okay. I'm skipping on my words because I think I've had too much caffeine this morning. Sorry.
Yeah, that happens. I've been there.
So anyways, there's so much that I relate to you, and I can't wait to kind of unravel your story and where you've really served. So if we could just start there, how did you find out your true calling and purpose? What has been your journey to discover that?
That's a great question. There's a dance obviously between discovering it and creating it, and really finding that balance of like, wow, there's a million different scenarios or options in life. We live in a world where there's almost too many doors we can take, and it sometimes stumbles us to not take any. But I would say I got really fortunate. And it came from a horrible story, but it ended up being a better story. But I was playing college basketball when I was 19, 15 years ago, and I tore my ACL. I got injured the first year I went, and right after high school, and it kind of threw my whole paradigm in a shift of, well, if basketball isn't it, then what is what is next? And so it was a horrific scenario, but a door that God opened a whole new life to me. And so I was 19 years old, injured, got a chance to do a study abroad program, and started traveling the world with a study abroad program, and just was my paradigm shifted on everything that made me a horrible student made me an incredible entrepreneur or creative or storyteller, and I never fit into the schooling system. And yeah, it kind of just, that was where it started, where I was just like, wow, there's passions and purpose in this world, in this life. I grew up in the suburbs of America, so we didn't have access to like really anything like that. And so yeah, when that happened at 19, I kind of just went on a crazy fiery drive to just help people with passion and purpose, because it was the first time in my life I felt like it wasn't a box. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not an academic, I'm not an athlete, I'm not a whatever. It was like it was beyond me. And so I got just addicted at 19 and just started traveling the world, serving in any capacity I could.
Yeah, so let's go a little deeper into that, because I know you've traveled quite a bit, over 80 countries, I believe, if I'm correct. But what transformed from there after your journey of traveling and learning more about yourself, number one, and also maybe a switch in your identity? Because I'm sure when you were 19, you're thinking, oh, this is my path, I'm going to be in sports and whatnot. But then the realization that that's not my path anymore. So how did you really uncover, through your travels, through your experience, how did you really get to the next point in your life, in the next direction?
Hmm. That's a great question. Yeah, I think I just grew up my whole life like I just didn't fit in. I just feel like I missed a meeting somewhere. I was like, did I miss a meeting like in third grade or something like that, where I'm supposed to know what to say and how to fit in? And just my whole life, I never, even when I played sports, I got made fun of and bullied and picked on, and just never found a space. Education was in the academic part was definitely not a box I fit in. So it was just always about myself. It was just always, there was like the way I kind of describe it in this idea of like, there was just a mirror in front of me.
Mm.
And when I went to school every day, I was thinking about, am I late to class? Did I do my homework? Who am I eating lunch with? What am I wearing? It was only about myself. And I think the moment that mirror turned into a window and I just started looking around and being like, wait a second, that person's eating lunch alone. That person's probably really insecure about the way they look. And I should probably compliment them, or that person probably needs help with their homework. And the moment I turned that mirror into a window, I think for me personally, I was just like, it's like my life went from black and white to color, where it wasn't about me anymore. And it just relieved the tension and pressure of everyone in the world telling me, what am I going to do? You know, I need a college degree to get a job. And it was always about like people just looking at me of like who I am or what I do, and not who I am. And so when it transformed into who I was, it was just me. It relieved all the pressure and stress. And so I just got crazy addicted to my purpose and my passion of helping people.
That's so amazing. I love how you say you turn the mirror into a window. That is just that reflection alone. I think people could think about, like, how are you looking at life? Is it all me, me, me? And sometimes we don't realize. I mean, it's good to be, if you want to say, self-centered in some way, because I think that if you are not filling up your cup, you can't serve to the capacity that you wish to serve. So I think it's important. But if you're literally so self-serving that you're not being able to serve others, then there's a void. And so, can you talk
Hmm.
about how you landed mentoring high school kids for Young Life? Because anybody that doesn't know about Young Life, I personally think it is absolutely remarkable. For, if there's parents out there, middle school, I don't know if they still have it, but it was Wildlife. That's where I
Yeah.
started, I think in eighth grade. And then high school is Young Life. And it's basically, actually, I would like you to describe what it is, because I don't even know how to like summarize it. But it was a game changer for me, and especially my faith. That's actually how I became a Christian, because I didn't grow up religious or a certain religion. And that's how I personally started to follow Christianity. So if you could kind of share what Young Life is, because I want parents to know the benefits of it, possibly to consider, to look into, and then also what led you there.
That's a great question. Yeah, Young Life was a pivotal part in my childhood as well. I didn't grow up in a religious family, and not even really about the religion part of even the way you're recommending it to parents. It was never about the religion to me or
Mhm.
the God of choice. It was just a community. It was
Exactly.
just like I was like 16 and someone's like, "Yo, come to this like thing tonight. It's called Young Life, and there's like crazy games and food fights." And I was like, "Cool." So I went, and I was just addicted. It was immediately like I was like, "Oh my god, people, kids just being kids, like having fun, just being goofy." And then there's like these older dope dudes that look cool and are sweet in their 20s, and they're just like kind and generous and mentors. They started mentoring me in a way that was like, "Yo, BC, let's go grab Chipotle this weekend or this week." And I'm like, why is this 26-year-old dope good looking dude want anything to do with me?
Mhm.
And it was the first time in my life I really was like, the power of mentorship, because parents kind of have to say what they have to say. They have to tell you to be good in school and do all these things, and then teachers have to say the same thing. And there's not really this older person in your court that just cares without an agenda of you trying to do something.
Mhm.
And that's what it felt like for me. I was 16, and Brandon was my mentor, Brandon Wheeler and Jason Sabbath. And yeah, it kind of just, for the first time in my life, felt like there was someone in my corner that wasn't just trying to tell me to do something. So that changed my life in a big way. And then years later, came home to the U.S. after traveling for 4 years, and God just put on my heart to mentor high school kids. So I started doing that with inner city kids in Denver. I got a call from Young Life Denver, like east side of Denver, which is like really urban, inner city, like at risk youth. And they're like, "Yeah, you want to come mentor the east side of Denver?" And I was like, "I don't know how to relate to these inner city. I'm from the
Right.
suburb. I don't even know what to do." Like, and it was super growth edge for me, because you could put me anywhere in the world at that time, but mentoring inner city kids, I just felt so like I didn't know how to do it. So I said yes, because the challenge seemed, pretty hard, and it changed my life forever. I moved to the east side of Denver. I lived in this community in this area,
Wow.
and for 5 years, hung out with a group of east side kids for pretty much every day almost.
Oh, so it's so inspiring, just so you know. Like after hearing your story, I was like, I want to be a Young Life mentor. I literally was like, but you brought up a very good point. It's not about if you're a Christian or this religious thing. It actually is so much the community. And I think what
Mhm.
so many, especially high schoolers, really anybody at any age these days, we're missing community. We're missing
Mhm.
connection. And this
Yeah.
was proven, especially during the pandemic, is like people were so much more isolated, but we are having this isolation problem because the way, everybody's turned to media, especially high schoolers, the way they communicate with each other is through text or an app or whatnot. And so community is such an important aspect. And I know this is one of the pillars that you talk about. So let's just dive into that. What have you noticed when somebody has community, especially these at risk teens that you worked with? What do you see happen when somebody is in a community that helps support them? Because I think this is really key to being able to step into our purpose and passions.
Yeah, community is community is everything. It's the cornerstone. Even and with COVID, um, tons of doctors and therapists and psychiatrists, they were all like, "Yo, some people do really well with therapy, and some people even need some medications to help them." But all these therapists were like, the missing component is community. Like, you need it. And the therapists were like, if you could take any of those away, you take therapy away, take the medication away, but you need to find community.
Yeah.
And I think therapy and medication can be helpful, resourceful, but we're needed in tribal situations. We're needed where we belong, where we feel like we belong, where we feel like we're useful, where we feel like we're contributing to a greater goal. And so my whole life is dedicated to building community, like authentic community. The church, something the church did really well for a long time was they were so good at just a gathering place. And a lot of people grew up going to either Catholic mass or church, just for the sense of there's nothing that exists like that. There's nothing that is just built around community. Obviously, the biggest thing is sports, and sports has found like a way to capitalize and turn this thing into community where it's, it can be beautiful, also very like, distracting, but we crave it more than anything, and we crave connection. Like, think about this. Like, I don't really watch sports, but if I'm from Denver and I'm in New York and I see someone with a Denver Bronco jersey,
Oh, yeah.
immediately like, oh my God, what's up? Like, yo, Denver Broncos, let's go. And we're connected so quickly that I don't care who that person voted for. I don't care what they do for work. I don't care what car they drive. I literally just am connected to them because they have some sort of symbol of connection. And we're in a society where we crave that so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to find those spaces. We need to find the new church, the new paradigm shift of like, okay, how do we create a new system where the church isn't judgmental or shameful or aggressive, and it's just a community center where people can go and, belong and rest and socialize without having to be a bar around sports. And so, yeah, community is the foundation of our life. It's our purpose.
Yeah. And what could you recommend for people listening, how to get connected to a community that's, that they feel aligned with? What would be some of your recommendations? Because I know that, some people are like, where do I start?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. There are tons of people really trying to be innovative with this next evolution of, there's apps, there's community building apps, where socializing apps, whether obviously the biggest one was meetup.com for a long time.
Yeah.
There's an app called, there's so many apps now. I would say go into the apps and look for spaces like that. Look for local events where, just, it could be anything. Just be open-minded. If it's a church event, or if it's a anything kind of event, you just got to start showing up. And then the biggest thing I would tell people is to really be innovative on creating the event. Create what you can't find. That's all what I do on social media is I created content I couldn't find. And when I was in my early 20s, I moved back to the US and I felt so lonely. And then I started hosting events that I couldn't, and I didn't care if 2 people came or 10 people came. I was like, yo, I'm going to host this event and we're just going to talk about the world and purpose and passions. And just, you got to be really courageous in creating what you can't find. And the first event I ever threw, I think 5 people came, and
look where it is today.
Yeah. And yeah.
That's so great. Yeah. I think that's really great to say. Like, for example, Meetup, actually, that's a really good one because you get to actually look at things you're interested in. And, again, we have to get a little uncomfortable to grow and to actually get what we want. We need to get a little uncomfortable. So it's like, just take the step. I think that's really great. So if we could go back to when you were mentoring these high school kids, so especially the diversity that you were mentoring, what do you feel was the common, I don't want to say problem, the common struggle these kids had, and how did you get them to open up about it? Because I know one of the things that is so key is, like, I talk about this too a lot, is vulnerability is really the pathway to have empathy, to have compassion. Without vulnerability, people can't connect to your heart. They can't see you for who you truly are. And I think so many high schoolers can't share their feelings or emotions. So anyways, that's kind of a loaded question, but
no, that's a beautiful question.
But yeah, I would love to hear your experience with that.
Well, that's you hit the nail on the head. That's my greatest, number one, biggest passion and focus and purpose on life is high school kids feeling safe and seen and celebrated, and the chance for them to be kids where they can play, and we live in a society, in a world where kids have to grow up fast, and they have to sometimes parent themselves or parent their siblings or become mature really quick, and they miss their entire childhood of just like, yo, I'm a kid, I'm only 13, this. And so play is a huge component with all the kids I've ever worked with. And then vulnerability and authenticity and leading by it, because kids don't care what you know. You can go into mentoring, whether it's Young Life or Big Brothers Big Sisters or any mentoring thing, and you kind of come in, you're like, I'm successful. I'm really smart. I have a lot of knowledge and wisdom. I just want to give it to all these kids. And these kids will look at you and be like, who the hell are you? Like, what? I don't give a shit what you know. And I love that because it's the most humbling journey you will ever go on is mentoring kids. And because they don't care, they're not impressed, and you have to earn your right to be heard. And the quote I live by in this whole philosophy is kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm.
And so you can
Gosh,
you
so good.
can try to you can try to speak at a high school. You could try to come into a mentoring facility and be really prideful because you're whatever. And the real journey of healing your heart and mentoring kids is the most humbling. I mean, I did a TEDx talk on it like 10 years ago. It was all about mentoring. And it was just that you learn more about the world, yourself, love, time. Like it's literally the most
Patience.
reflective patience. It's the closest thing you can get to parenting without parenting. And so I went into that space. And I think for a year and a half, all my inner city kids, they knew my name, they knew who I was. We hung out all the time, but they never, for a year and a half, they didn't really ask what I did. They didn't really care. You know, they're just in their own world, playing sports, looking good, going on dates, you know, trying to do their thing. And then like a year or so into it, they're like, BC, what do you do, man? You're always around us, you know, like going to all of our sporting events and helping us and buying lunch for us. And it took, you know, a time, and it's a patience game. And at the end of the day, kids just want to feel loved, and they just want to feel like there's a safe space where they can share really tough stuff. And I've worked with thousands of high school kids on vulnerability and authenticity and leading from the heart.
Yeah.
And it is emotional breakthrough when kids can share something that they've never shared with anyone. That is what is burdening their joy, you know.
Wow, it's so remarkable, and it's so great to hear some of these things. To be honest, on just personally, because my partner has a 13-year-old, so I kind of I'm going through this stuff right now. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
so as far as the vulnerability and them and teaching them how to lead with their heart, how does this begin? Like how do you recommend or what have you learned to help them be able to be vulnerable? I know you said creating a safe space, but still, I think that it still takes time for them to be able to share their pains or whatever's going on at home or the bullying, you know. So, how do you open that door for them or help open the door for them?
That's a great question. Yeah, when working with high school kids or really anyone, you know, and we're asking for authenticity and vulnerability, and the only thing is you got to do it. You got to show up first. You got to be the first one to say like, "Yo, I've struggled with addiction. I've struggled with, um, you know, these things. I've struggled with self worth." And you really show up just with your heart in hand, and it's really ugly and messy. And to be a parent and do it, it's really scary because you're about to, you know, in our culture and society, vulnerability looks like a weakness. It looks like a submission to the world that we're trying to get a lot of money and muscles and success with, and it does the opposite. And yet it's that formula has broken down our culture and society to where we're the most, you know, anxious, overwhelmed society and culture ever, because we think leadership looks like this. Or in reality, you just got to do it first. You got to, you know, even when you're sharing with your kids, like, you know, hey, you know, the other day you said something and it made me feel really sad. And not like, you know, not getting mad at them for that, be like, oh yeah, the other day I felt like you did this, and it kind of just like hurt my feelings. And that's, you know, that's one path. And then another path is, yeah, when I was young, I really wronged someone, and I hurt someone really bad because I was selfish or prideful or whatever it is. And just trying to lead with vulnerability, because
Yeah,
they will only follow what you do, not what you say. And so
absolutely.
you as for as much as you can be like, do this, do this, do this. But kids don't listen to us; they watch us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so and then the other piece of besides sharing, or once they share, and this goes to, we're not just talking about high schooler kids or whatnot. This really goes to everybody that you work with, and you work with a range of ages, right? So people could be 45 and they've never shared that something that happened when they were 5 years old, and they've been
Mm.
holding this weight for so long. This, if you want to say, trauma in their body, and so once somebody shares their vulnerability, I know you help people really uncover the root cause of that wounding. And how do you help them heal that pain? How have you walked anybody you've worked through that?
Yeah, it's a journey. The healing journey is a big process, and it takes a lot of patience and just listening, really listening to people asking questions and not listening to answer. I think we all know what that feels like when someone's like asking questions just because they want to give you some sort of answer, but listening with your heart and listening just so they can be you can just be a space for them, and you don't have to say anything. A lot of the times you don't have to give advice, you don't have to even give your own experience. You just really need to hold that space for them. And then, like I said, the biggest thing is you got to go lead by example. And so I mean, I mentor and coach kids for a long time, but I mentor and coach 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds. I've worked with thousands of parents, and it's really leading with that vulnerability first of just uh, going before them and opening up about your own addictions, your own struggles, your own pains, your own suicidal thoughts or self-worth or depression, and you speak it and lead it, and they might not respond. They might not actually like meet you where you're at, but that's not up to you or them. It's really up to just you leading by example. So you don't go in with intentions, but just really getting really good at listening and asking questions. That's, I think, my two favorite qualities of Jesus is Jesus would go and he would sit with people and just ask questions and just listen to them. He could easily came and sat and like preached, and he did like have moments where he talked, but most of the times he talked, it was because people were asking him questions, and so just being curious and open-minded and open-hearted, and just really gentle with the healing journey, asking questions of what people's childhood was, people with relationship with their parents was, and then getting uncomfortable. And just when someone says, oh, this was really hard, not trying to be like, okay, let's not talk about that anymore. Be like, dang, well, how'd that make you feel? And, our programs and the work that we do with our retreats and our online programs, it's based around a couple different pillars. And music and nature and play is a big one. Like a lot of the times you can get caught in the trauma loop and you're just in an echo chamber of everything is trauma, everything is a victim, everything is every action, everything I say and do. And we just get caught in this loop in our head, when in reality, you really have to get back to play. You have to get back to nature. You have to get back to dancing and moving your body. And that's part of the journey. It's to close the trauma circle. For me, this is like a program I've developed over 15 years. But like there's a lot of healing with your parents, your relationship with your parents, relationship with your younger self, relationship with your younger siblings or people you knew when you were a kid. And then for me personally, this is like my own, but to close the circle of healing every kind of component is to like be childlike again. Like we're really trying to get back to this, like children are our greatest teachers, and they're not judgmental. They're in the moment. They're in the present. They're playing, they're loving, they're emotional, which is great. Being emotional is amazing. We're emotional beings first and foremost. And so, it's a couple different components to it.
Absolutely. And I love how you say to close it full circle is I like to think of we need to return home to ourselves. Like, what does that feel like? And that home is peace. It's joy. It's play. I think that's a big thing. It's like I think play is like I remember sharing this reel once that like the one thing that I can't remember, but it was the word play. It's like, we have to remember to like, that's our nature. Is like, it's not about all these stresses and all these things. And if we keep running in that loop or that cycle, it's like, we'll never feel at home or at peace in our own body. And so I love what you, like, as I learned more about you in the program, I'm like, this is totally like my cup of tea is adventure, getting outside your comfort zone, play, nature. Nature is so healing. Once we remove ourselves from all this noise, we're able to really connect deeply with ourselves. And so I know one of the other things you talk about is how to basically live in alignment with our authentic self. And I think so many people, I think that's where the big struggle is. And that's why I love talking about it, is so many of us aren't living truly authentic in who we are, in alignment with what feels right to us, our values, our beliefs and whatnot, because there's always something running in the back that's dictating how we should show up. So why do you think what's your personal opinion, why so many people struggle really showing up as their authentic self?
Yeah, I think a big reason people are struggling so much with showing up as their authentic self and their truth of who they are is because we live in a society where we think we want to be liked by everyone. And even when I was young as a kid, it wasn't that I needed to be liked by anyone. It's just I didn't want to be unliked by anyone. And so sometimes I went invisible. Sometimes I went, I was trying to like just stay in the winds. I was like, okay, I don't need to be liked by everyone, but man, I don't want to be unliked by even one person.
Yeah.
And so we live in this fight or flight state of just like trying to figure out how we speak our voice when, there was a moments where we had traumatic childhoods with our families and fighting with our siblings or our parents or seeing our parents fight. And so the last thing our ego wants or our body wants is to be triggered again and go into fight, so we're in fight or flight because we're always afraid that we're going to not belong. And so we're afraid to share our hearts or our emotions, usually mostly our emotions. And there's a time when we were young where we were crying and someone's like, yo, boys don't cry. Yo, grow up. Yo, babies don't cry. Don't show your emotion. And we are at the core, humans, our number one is we're emotional beings. We're not cerebral thinking beings. I think the unbalance of authenticity is we've come into this thing of like, oh, we're brilliant beings. We're so smart, but you cannot think your way out of trauma or pain. Like you can be really smart. You can listen to all the podcasts and all the books and even be like a smart person, but you get a call that your mom dies. You can be like, oh, my mom's dead. It's nothing I could do about it. Right. You could try it that way. You could try that route, but man, you will suppress all the emotion of like, yeah, my mom died. It's just, and so we need to get back to just allowing being emotional beings. And it's so beautiful, the highs and the lows.
Absolutely.
And then just to know that the goal of life is not to be liked by everyone. It's just to be loved by a few deep people and mostly yourself.
Most importantly, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I actually heard, I was going through Reels. You have such a great Instagram. You share I love your page.
Thanks.
I love
Aw,
everything you
thanks.
share. And you share your cute little son too. How old is he?
He's 14 months.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I'm sure that's so fun.
Yeah, it's
Such a
hilarious.
process. But one of your reels, it was about that you said men at the core, what they fear most is, or what they experience most is shame, and then women, what they fear or experience most is abandonment.
Mm.
What? Why? I'm curious, where did you find that out, and why is this the case that men the shame and women abandonment?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. Yeah, the core. I guess I was talking about the masculine and the feminine energies in our lives, and the core wound of a lot of men of most men is shame. If you really backtrace everything with what they're doing, with whether they're addicted to alcohol or drugs or pornography or video games or whatever it is, if you come back to the string, I'm always like
The
talking
root.
about the string effect. Just follow it with a string and be like, whoa, that's tied to shame. At a young age, a boy couldn't beat up a kid, so he tied, and he had a lot of shame about, and so he put a lot of muscle on, or he couldn't afford a nice outfit to impress this girl he liked, or whatever it is, and so he bought a car, went chased money, and men just hold this weight of shame and embarrassment of just like, I'm not enough. There's some sort of criteria to be a man, and we are and someone has poisoned the watering hole to where men get the water to it's sports, it's women, it's wealth, it's muscles, and we're drinking this water that's been poisoned, and it's thrown the whole masculine out of balance, where we have no purpose anymore, where we have become numb to owning our ability to protect the feminine. And at the beginning of humanity, men were the protectors of the village, of the kids, of the women, and we have no useful purpose right now, and so we've flipped the thing to where now we are somewhat the problem. Not to be like rude to men, because I hold a lot of space for a lot of men, and to really go into tapping into our emotions. I think that's it for men, really getting emotional of like, man, I have a lot of shame and embarrassment around this, and I don't know how to I don't know how to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the women's side, you said abandonment.
Yeah. So abandonment, feminine energy is very obviously beautiful and soft and nourishing, and there is parts of women's psyche and their not only their brain but also in their spiritual realm of if they ever decide to have a child, there is a moment in their life where they're going to need to be fully dependent on a provider of some sort of support system. You had a baby, which was also, very vulnerable. You had to, it's very vulnerable. And then you have the baby, which is a really intense experience. And, you got to rebound from that. And then you have to nourish the baby. And so there's a moment in a woman's feminine energy where she has to be fully surrendered and dependent on something to support her as she nourishes this baby. And so the tying into this, the feminine energy just wants to make sure that they are going to be safe and protected. Even if they decide not to have kids, it's programmed in our psyche and the spiritual realm. And so yeah, I think there's like different ways to look at it, but that's a big one of just women want to feel safe that if they ever have kids, and even if they don't, they're still part of their psyche of they're afraid to be abandoned because there's someone better, or, they're not worthy of it. They're not worthy of love. And both really shame and abandonment come down to your self-worth and your worthiness of what you think you're worthy of love.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to pull that out there because I thought that was intriguing. So one thing, of course, you talk about pursuing purpose, and a lot of this kind of wraps into kind of the foundational pieces of really getting clear on your passion and purpose is going through, if you want to say the foundational pieces, the underbelly of things, so you could reveal and birth those passions and purpose and live in authentic alignment with it, right? So I know for myself, for the longest time ever, I was trying to figure out what's my passion, what's my purpose. And to my knowledge, that's one of the most commonly Googled questions is like, how do I find my purpose? And I'm sure you know that. But it's interesting that some people could live their whole life never even having that answer, and so how do you help people really uncover what their passions and purpose are? And then what do you define as purpose as well?
Yeah, what a journey we're all on. Yeah, I looked up this like Latin Greek definition of what purpose means, like at the root core. Yeah. And it was a while ago, and I found out it means end goal. And I was so blown away by that. It's like, wow, it's the end goal. Not that it's a place you arrive, but it's an embodiment you become. Where it is, there's so much stress and pressure around purpose of like, why am I here on earth? I got to figure this out. But really, the reason it's pursuing purpose is because it's never ending of just like the pursuit of serving and loving people and becoming more aligned with who I am and what I am. And, some people find their purpose in saving the environment, saving animals, saving, or helping kids get education or water around the world. And so people find a lot of it's just how you contribute, how you're useful to the world, but it's not something you're always doing. It's really just someone you're becoming and embodying. Like, it's not, I'm going to build this school for kids and then my purpose is complete. That's not how it works. It'd be too easy. And it wouldn't be humbling. You got to really be humbled in your purpose. And so you pursue people, you pursue, things that help the world and give back to the world. That's not about yourself. The whole thing of pursuing purpose is in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution in America. It's like we have the pursuit of happiness, which is I think the pursuit of happiness is more dangerous than the pursuit of purpose, because the happiness, it's fleeting. So fleeting. It comes and goes. But the pursuit of purpose is when you're pursuing something bigger than yourself, outside of yourself, all of those knobs that are turned on 10 of anxiety and depression and all these fears, they just start slowly turning down. Like, they go from 10 and you're like, wait a second, I'm so stressed on what I look like today. But wait a second, who can I compliment today? Who can I love today? And, I'm so stressed by money, but oh man, can I just buy someone's coffee today? The less we make it about ourselves, the more life becomes engaging and useful. And it's not about figuring all of our shit out before we do that. I think the lie we've been told, and you said this at the beginning of the call, this is just one of my opinions, and a lot of people use this, but a lot of people say you can't pour from an empty cup, and I believe it, and I've heard that, and I understand the concept of it, but I challenge people to sometimes serving people is what fills your cup.
So true.
And so we live in a society that it's like, hey, get your money right, then donate to charities or help people with money.
Right.
Get your love romantic relationship right, then go volunteer and mentor kids. Get your job right, and it's just like, hey, fill your cup, then pour into people. And I personally believe there's a lot of people that have tons of money, love of their life, all this stuff, and they're not pouring into people because they chased that, and then they forgot along the way that the purpose was just people,
Yeah.
And so I just always want to challenge people on like, yo, show up in ways that don't make sense. And sometimes I would just say, I would test people that you'll realize what actually fills your cup of confidence, of joy, of spirit, of soul, is doing things that aren't about for you or for yourself,
Absolutely. It's so true. And it's been proven. And I love how you actually touched on that. That is so key. And I guess when I'm talking about like filling your cup is, are you nourishing, like, are you clear on what brings you joy per se? And it could
Totally.
be the simplest thing for me. It's being out in nature. It's being in sunshine. Are you doing those things? Because those little things that you could do every day, it's like a little seed in your, your little pot. It's,
Exactly.
it's nourishing you. Right. So I think it's just making sure you're nourished so that you're able to at least come from a place that's just not resentful. And I think sometimes
Totally.
but I love how you really walked us through that, because I think that's a whole different perspective. And I think that's a great way people should look at it is, and generally they say when you're depressed, the first thing you should do is find a way to serve. And like you
Yep.
said, because that
Exactly.
alone will fill your cup. And you've
Yeah.
obviously experienced this in your own life in so many vast ways, and you've witnessed it too. So going back to purpose, because I love how you say it's a pursuit, obviously passion, love, pursuit. That's what it's all about too. It's a constant pursuit. We're on, as long as we are living, we are ever evolving, growing, and becoming a
Mm.
new version of ourselves, hopefully. I think that people that are constantly, learning new things and being uncomfortable and seeking new knowledge and wisdom, we are going to be on this constant pursuit and ever evolving. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I love how you put it that way as well. So if you were to leave, maybe some questions people should ask themselves to start really uncovering and getting more clarity on their purpose, what would you leave the listeners with today just to get started? And then we'll talk about your offerings and whatnot.
Wow. Yeah. Man, that's a great question. If you're listening to this, I appreciate you and honor your commitment to diving into these hard questions and emotions. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is really checking in with your emotions, um, and uh, moving those emotions to where it sounds crazy, but I guess I don't know where everyone's at. So it's really
Yeah,
hard to like,
true.
and everyone, it's like, it's like telling someone who wants to work out to go do a marathon. And I don't know where,
Yeah,
I don't know where they're
that's
at in
so
their
true.
exercise gym, but in their soul, I would say, if you can, get a hold of your parents and just tell them you love them and you appreciate them. They tried their absolute best. They only did what they knew how to do. They never got taught how to regulate their anger or their nervous system or their purpose or their passion. So they tried their absolute best, and really just loving them. Our parents don't need to be shamed for what they didn't do or what they did do. They just need ultimate compassion and love. And the only thing that's ever changed anyone in the history of the world is love. And we try to change people by shame. We try to change people by knowledge. We try to shame people by emotions. And it's like, people, the only thing that's changing someone is when they feel loved and they feel
Mm,
like they can evolve from love, and not change from shame. But I would say that, get a hold of your parents if you can't. If you can, your siblings potentially as well, and just loving them and giving them love no matter where they're at. If they wronged you, if they did something bad to you, loving them and really trying to just move that energy with love. You have to lead. And when you become a heart led leader, you have to be the first person that calls, the first person that texts, the first person that apologizes, the first person that says I'm wrong, even if you weren't wrong. When you lead from the heart and you've alchemized your ego and your pain and your shame, no matter what the situation is, you always text, call, apologize, and love first. And so I would, if you're listening to this, yeah, reaching out to your parents, your siblings, getting out to nature, getting really sober, sober from not alcohol or drugs, but social media, from everyone in the world, from the news. Like, your greatest strength is sitting in nature quietly in solitude, even for 5 minutes to an hour to weeks. You just need to slow down and get back to your roots of why you're here on earth, you have a really incredible opportunity while you're here on earth to do some really beautiful things and become someone beautiful, but you need to slow down and be patient. More than anything, you just need to slow down. So I guess some of those talking points.
That was so good. So, so good. And it makes it hard when I ask my final question what you're going to say. But uh, so, can you share some of your offerings? Because, or I'm obviously going to have everything in the show notes, but what you have a mentorship program community, a big community that you've built. What are some of those? What can people maybe jump on board with?
I started. I've done tons of things throughout the years, but one right now is called Pursuing Purpose .life. That's the website, Pursuing Purpose .life, and the Instagram. And we do events, we do retreats, and then we do online programs for people all around the world. And it's just based on this work, man, based on community, based on healing, trauma, inner child, self-worth. And so, yeah, that's, I would start there to see if we're doing some offerings here soon. We do masterminds online with people. We've had over 250 people from 35 countries do our programs online, which is really exciting. And then social media, reach out to me if you ever want to chat or have questions about life or anything. And then obviously one-on-one coaching for certain kinds of people that are on certain journeys of different things. So
Yeah. So awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, final question. Let's see where you go with this. So if you were to share a
wait, sorry, I
piece,
want to say one more thing. The last
yeah,
thing.
yes, please.
Also, if you're listening to this and it's before June, we're doing a high school program I've done for 11 years now in Denver, and it's 200 high school kids from all around the country. It's called National Leadership Academy,
Mm,
and nationalleadershipacademy.org. And I've done it for 11, 12 years, where we take a couple hundred high school kids for 4 days, and we teach them about love and vulnerability and leading from the heart. And it's probably the most powerful thing I've ever truly got to create and be a part of, because the work I do with adults is amazing, but to see a 15, 16-year-old kid, really
I love this.
share what they're going through is it's pretty wild. I mean, every single kid leaves crying and goes back home, and I get a call from their parents next week being like, where the
What
hell is
did you
my kid
do?
at? Because this is not my kid. But they'll be like, why is my son doing the dishes and complimenting his mom
Oh
right
my
now? Like,
gosh.
and
Okay,
it's
so what's the age group?
going into freshman year to graduating senior year. So
Okay, I need to
either
find out more
leaving
about
eighth
this.
grade or just graduated high school.
Awesome. I want my partner's daughter to do it. So I will find out more about that. That's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you for that, for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so, and again, I'll have everything in the show notes for everybody to access. And so, last question. If you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned on your journey, and it was just a piece of wisdom that you feel anybody needs to hear right now, what would that piece of wisdom be?
Piece of wisdom. Oh man.
You shared a lot. So it's basically, there's so many lessons I'm sure you've learned in your life. But if there was one profound lesson that has really impacted you that you just feel the world needs to hear, what would that be?
I guess something that's coming up for me now is just to be patient. It's a marathon. Like, this life is a marathon, and you really have to slow down. It's not a race. It is not a competition. It is a marathon of healing, of failing and learning and trials and errors. And you will fail at loving people. You will fail at podcasts you start, or companies you start, or nonprofits you start. You will fail, and you will learn, and you will find moments of healing and transformation and breakthrough. But just continue to know it's a marathon, and that everyone is not racing against each other, but racing with each other. that we all have the same goals. At the end of the day, all of humans have the same exact goals, no matter who you vote for or what God you pray to. We want to feel inner peace. We want to feel like we have a family that loves us, that we love our family. We want to feel useful and purposeful in this life. We want to feel like we can create art or music or videos. And we all want the same thing at the end of the day, and to just be really patient with yourself and with everyone else.
So beautifully said. That was absolutely a phenomenal message. And it wasn't something you touched on yet. So thank you for that. BC, this has just been such an honor. And I just so appreciate, again, as I said at the top of the episode, I just want to honor you and like really just pay my gratitude for what you've done and all the lives you impacted, and just to spend the time with us. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you too. And yeah, this was an incredible conversation. I haven't done a podcast in a long time, so this was probably one of the better ones I've ever going to be a part of. So I'm excited.
Thank you.